Good morning. Welcome. Saturday. There's a pattern to our weeks these days. I go out for a paper on a Saturday, and then there's the cryptic crossword to look forward to. Oh, the joys of life. Pleasure in little things. Yes, we are looking at Luke's Gospel, Luke chapter 6, and we've come to a phrase that, quite honestly, I've never ever spoken on, really. I can't remember ever speaking on it. It's in verse 39. Jesus told them a parable. Can a blind man lead a blind man? Will they not both fall into a pit? Now, so most of you know what a parable is. Jesus taught a lot of parables. But a parable is an example from ordinary life that tells a spiritual truth, basically. It's a story to help us understand a principle. And he could have told a story about not judging. He could have told a story about not condemning. He could have told a story about forgiveness. And in other places, he did just that. But here he tells just a little word picture and tells them and says, imagine a blind man being helped by another blind man. Well, how far are they going to get before they fall into a pit? And you can close your eyes and you can see these two blind men wandering about without any idea where they were going. No, if you're a blind man, you need a sighted man to help you, or a guide dog. We have them now, don't we? To help you get around without fear of falling into a pit or falling down a manhole or something. And that's so true, but many of us spend our lives with people who are the same as us. And it doesn't help us, If you get people, this is one of the reasons why it's so important when people come to faith to actually mix with people who are further on in the faith than you are, because that person will be able to guide you into more truth. But if you only mix with people who are exactly where you are, you don't get very far, because they don't know which way to go and they don't know what are the best lines to follow. A disciple is not above his teacher, but everyone, when he's fully taught, will be like his teacher. I remember when I was a lot younger. I came to faith when I was 14, and in my 30s, I was introduced to a lady who was a good 15 years older than me, who had just come to faith. She'd lived completely an unchristian, unchurched way of life, and she had to learn about everything, about every aspect of life, about how to be Christian in her marriage and with regard to her children and in her relationship with her family, who weren't people of faith when she came to faith. And she was wandering around in the dark. She didn't know which way the Bible was, which way to approach the Bible. She didn't know what to read. She didn't know how to read it. She didn't know how to pray. She didn't know anything. And she needed somebody who knew to help her find the way, And I was privileged to be a spiritual mother or a spiritual guide to someone quite a bit older than me. And we are very good friends still to this day, and she's now easily equal with me, if not, well, she's just lovely, But Jesus taught his disciples so that they could be like him. And all the teaching, I've been pondering on it this morning, all the teaching of the New Testament, everything that Jesus taught was to restore what was lost in the Garden of Eden. In the Garden of Eden, man and woman were created in the image of God. They were the only thing created in the image of God. They were different. Someone said yesterday, and I thought it was a lovely thing to say, that actually of all animals, of all creatures on this earth, it's only human beings that communicate by speech. It is unique to us because we're created in the image of God who speaks, the God who speaks. And that image has been marred and damaged and changed by sin. And what God wants to do is restore us to the beauty that he originally created in man and womankind. And there's a verse in one of my favourite little passages in 1 John. If you're not familiar with where that is, that's almost the last book in the Bible. 1 John chapter 3, verse 2 says, "It does not yet appear what we shall be, but we know when he appears," meaning Jesus, "when he appears, we shall be like him, for we shall see him as he is. And everyone who thus hopes in him purifies himself as he is pure." So the aim of our Christian walk is to be like Jesus, to be restored to that relationship with God the Father. And Jesus himself said, "If you've seen me, you've seen the Father." So that's why we put Jesus right at the centre, because if we want to know what God is like, we look at God made man, who shows us every characteristic of God the Father. And he does that so that we can emulate him, so that we can be like him. And as we long for that day when we become truly like him in the resurrection, we do what we can to follow him in this life, so that the change then is not quite so radical. We want to be like him because we love him. That's why those verses about not judging and not condemning and forgiving and giving are so important, because that's what God is like. Look at Jesus. When he met people who were sinful and in trouble, he never condemned them. He knew what they'd done. He knew what their lives were like, and he didn't tolerate their sin. He told them to stop sinning and to follow him, but he never condemned them. It was not what he came to do. He didn't come to point the finger and tell us how awful we are. He came to show us what God is like. He came to show us what the Father was like. That immense love of the Father. He wanted to show it, and he showed it every day of his life. People came and stormed after him and demanded from him, and he met them all. He healed them all. He never sent them away empty. Even when his disciples wanted to give him a rest, he didn't stop. He loved and he loved and he loved. And he wanted so much to bring that fullness of life, that restoration, to every single person that he met. Sometimes the people didn't respond and they turned away and they carried on their own way. And there are moments in the Gospels, and we'll see them, when Jesus laments, he almost cries over people who will not respond to him, because his heart is so full of love and compassion for each one. So the wonderful thing is that we don't have to stay blind. If we're like these two blind men, like in the parable, wandering around not knowing which way to go, we can link in with Jesus and with the people who follow Jesus and learn from them and regain our sight and be able then to walk with someone else who needs to regain their sight, because Jesus is in the healing business of every aspect of our life, so that we become more and more like God, like we were meant to be, created in his image, just like him. Have a great day. I'll see you tomorrow.